Good evening, Grace Covenant. It is Wednesday, May 27th, and I'm a day late with my devotional. I usually do my devotionals on Tuesday, and I had a plan and everything, and this Tuesday I was ready to do it, and then got sidetracked on a bunch of things, and then had a session meeting, and after the session meeting, I honestly did not give it another thought. I totally forgot. And so when I do that, I know that is a sure sign I have too much on my plate. And that's not surprising because I do have too much on my plate. We all have too much on our plates right now because we're all processing multiple levels of really intense things, from the pandemic to all the really difficult, horrible realities of our news, what's in the news, what's happening in the world. There's just a lot of intensity to that. And then just our own homes and the different stresses and strains about going back to work, for people who have been not at work, people who need to go back to work but can't, just all the different issues of just economic realities and the vulnerability that we all feel right now. So I think that we all have a lot that we're processing right now. And so anyway, I'm doing my devotional on Wednesday. I asked Samantha if I could do mine today because I didn't mean to miss yesterday. So here I am. It's Wednesday, and I have been thinking a lot about death. And if you're probably thinking about death some too, if you're paying any attention to what is going on right now in the universe with the number of people dying from COVID-19, the number of people who are suffering from the continued impacts of white supremacy culture and intense poverty and economic injustice, nationalism, ignorance. There's all kinds of things that are causing a lot of suffering in the world today. And so we're all holding that. We're all processing that in our own ways. And I want to say that I've done a lot of writing through the years addressed to white people because I, myself, am white. And I learned a long time ago that anti-racism work is not about asking people of color what we should do to change racism. It's about white people changing. There would be no racism without whiteness. Whiteness is the kind of starter of racism. And so with George Floyd's murder at the hands of police, this is just something that is repeated over and over again. And then we see the same kind of rhetoric come out from different quadrants. And there's a lot of rhetoric from white people, and I'm speaking to progressive white people, because sometimes progressive white people, we feel like racists are other people, when really we're some of the most tenacious holders of this disease. We are carriers of it in some really harmful and damaging ways. And I think one of the things that I hear often from my white progressive siblings is, I don't understand, or I can't believe it, or can you believe this happened? Yes, I can believe it. And I'm not sure why anybody is still confused about why this keeps happening. Um, I mean, what else do you need in terms of evidence, data, examples, shocking images, human suffering? What else do you need to fill in the blanks that white supremacy is deadly? It's killing people. It kills black people. It kills brown people. It's slowly killing all of us, really. And white supremacy is baked into all of our societal ills. It's baked into our environmental crisis. It's baked into greed and the problems with capitalism. It's baked into the way COVID-19 is working. It's baked into wealth accumulation. It's baked into the kind of non-trustworthy nature of much of our politics these days. There's nothing that we can disentangle from the effects of white supremacy. So, in thinking about death, there are a few different things that have kind of bubbled up for me. One is, in a very primal way, there's just a lot of death around us. There was an adorable little nest in my barn of baby birds. They were just these tiny little, very fragile looking little creatures with little fuzzy heads. And their mother was so attentive. She was busy and taking care of those little guys with such diligence. And then I came in one morning to the barn and they were gone. And there were some feathers on the ground, and obviously there had been some struggle, some violence. The babies were gone. And then a few days later, I see a snake skin there. So obviously a snake got those babies. Now that in the theological world is called natural evil, in that there are predators and there is prey, and that's a part of the natural order of things. And there's a certain cruelty that seems endemic to just existence. So that's natural evil. And then there's this other level of death that is the human experience of death, when someone dies too soon, not after a long life, or someone suffers, or someone takes their own life. There are deaths that feel just out of the natural order, when a parent loses a child. And those deaths are just beyond language in terms of the pain that they bring. And there's a certain tragic nature to those deaths, such loss. And then there are the deaths of, hundreds of thousands of people that are dying of this virus, which on some level is natural evil, and on another level is this tragedy. And then on another level, it's there is a real violence to this, that that if our leaders, if people who had power were handling it better, fewer people would be dead. And then there is George Floyd's death, the man in Minneapolis who was basically suffocated by a police officer who had his knee on his neck. That death is not natural. It is tragic. It is violent. It is wrong. It is evil. And it's also some kind of weird, repetitive, it's this repetitive, destructive behavior of white supremacy culture. It is the repetition of terror. I don't know if those little baby birds were terrified of that snake. I know every parent wakes up in the middle of the night terrified that something's going to happen to their child. And I know that we're all scared and maybe terrified of COVID-19. But it's a different kind of terror that black and brown people have to live with in white supremacy culture. It is day in and day out. It is something that can't be escaped. It is something that permeates every moment of their lives. Every moment. And therefore, it permeates every moment of all of our lives on some level. So what is that doing? What does it do to white people that we live in a culture where on some level that's working for us? What does that mean for my existence? That it's somehow, I'm somehow able to tolerate that my black and brown siblings live with constant terror and the trauma that embeds in the very way that they live and breathe and can't breathe and move around this world. I feel like sitting with that reality is both necessary and on some level impossible for white people until we admit our complicity in it. I'm not talking about guilt. I'm not talking about shame. I'm talking about truth. And as a person of faith, truth is the thing I'm supposed to seek after with every fiber of my being. And so, trying to protect myself from the grief, trying to protect myself from the terror, is part of what permeates and perpetuates white supremacy with this degree of staying power. Why has white supremacy been so successful? Why has it been the most impactful tool of power hoarders, wealth accumulators? Why has it been so successful? Because a lot of people draw meaning from the narratives that it gives us. The narrative of white supremacy is that white ways are the right ways, that being able to be competent and to be high functioning in white culture is the best way to be. And letting go of that and beginning to understand oneself in a world stripped of competency, stripped of the capacity to be successful by these metrics, means you're going to have to look at yourself in the mirror and believe there's something still left of you without those things. And that is a real act of faith, Do I believe that I'm truly a child of God? Do I believe I'm worth something in this world without the white capitalist supremacy narrative that tells me I'm worth something because I know how to succeed in this system? I can only begin to glimpse at a world in which we find a different way to value one another, in which truly every life would be so precious that we would know how to grieve, from the baby bird to George Floyd and everything in between, that we would know how to do that together. This Sunday coming up is Pentecost, and I hope we can all ask the Spirit to guide us, yes, but also to break us open so that we can have access to that child of God that's within us, that's within each of us, that has value, that has promise, that is lovable and capable of love, apart from these narratives that literally are killing us. I guess the question is, are we ready for something new? I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for a world in which we know how to grieve together, and in which we're all on the same page and in solidarity that no one should ever have to die like George Floyd died. And that when people die too soon, or when people suffer more than any sentient being should ever have to, that is a loss that we can all mourn together, that we can weep together, that we can feel the diminishment together. To me, that could ennoble existence more than anything we've ever known in this era that we're living in now. So those are some heavy thoughts, I know, but I know that you, Grace Covenant, have the stamina and the resilience and the wisdom and the generosity of spirit to hold these heavy feelings that our world is holding right now. And I feel hopeful that if we can sit with it and hold it together, that maybe something new is being born. Blessings.